Hey everyone, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and in today's video we are jumping right into the year 2022. We're going to talk about all of the confirmed and rumored releases coming to 4K next year. So I have a ton of confirmations that I can take you guys through just about to the 1st of April. So pretty much the entire first quarter of the year, I have confirmations, I have dates, confirmed 4K titles. Now, outside of those confirmations, there's also been rumors floating around that I will address. Some that I think are more legitimate than others, some I think are kind of a guess, and some are pretty much confirmed and will likely be coming to 4K. So we'll talk about all those at the end, but I'm going to start right on January 2nd, and I'm going to run you all the way through January, February, and March of 2022, so you know what to expect here in the first quarter of the year and what you should be planning for and saving for to add to your 4K collection. Now, throughout the next year, I will be covering lots of these titles in 4K reviews, and I'll be doing more updates, physical media news, things like this throughout the year as well. So if you want to stay up to date, make sure you're subscribed and like this video so others will see it and we keep spreading the word about physical media. I really appreciate the support there, and our goal for 2022 is 100,000 subscribers. So every single one counts, and I appreciate you all. So I'm going to jump right into things here, and like I said, we're going to go in order, so basically starting on January 2nd, which is the first release of the year, and taking you all the way through the end of March and then into rumors for the rest of the year. So on January 2nd, even though that is a Sunday, and that's not typically a day that movies are released, typically they're always released for home video on Tuesdays, for some reason Disney has decided to use January 2nd as a date to release a new 4K title, and that 4K is Pirates of the Caribbean. Right now, only the first one is confirmed, but I would expect if this one does well, we will see the rest or potentially a box set on 4K at some point. It has shown up in other countries already. Again, this is a US only release list, but most of these dates stay consistent or roughly within a few weeks in other countries. So Pirates of the Caribbean comes to the US on January 2nd, first time on 4K, and it's good to see Disney putting out some more catalog titles on the format. So I'm excited for that one. So then on January 4th, the only one we really have is Weathering with You on 4K, which is an anime, Japanese animation title, a little bit niche. But then on January 11th, we get into some of the heavy hitters. So a lot of these are newer releases, but we have Dune coming to 4K, which will be really exciting. I don't believe it's going to have the IMAX scenes, unfortunately, so that's disappointing, but I can't wait to watch it because I didn't catch it in theaters. I didn't watch it on HBO Max. I wanted to check it out on 4K disc. So we've got that coming on January 11th, and then we've also got Halloween Kills, another release from late last year, which did a little bit of an on-demand and theatrical release at the same time. It's a continuation in this new Halloween trilogy, and that's coming to 4K with an extended version and an alternate ending. So I'll be curious to see what that's all about. I think I know what the alternate ending is based on articles on the internet, but I'm still curious to see what they do and how it looks on 4K. Now for catalog titles on January 11th, we have The Great Escape on 4K coming from Kino Lorber. That was previously released by Criterion and had a 4K scan, so it's really interesting to see Kino, again, getting the rights to something that Criterion already put out on Blu-ray and scanned very well and put out a great transfer of. They're doing this with a few titles, which you'll see in the list here, but they also did it with Silence of the Lambs, and it feels like Kino is kind of grabbing all these 4K rights to all these movies that Criterion previously had the rights for. So it's really interesting. Kino is definitely taking a step up into 4K, and they've taken advantage, I think, of the fact that Criterion was very slow to join the 4K world. Then also on January 11th, we have another catalog title. This is coming from Paramount, and it is Juice, starring Tupac Shakur. This had a previously released remastered Blu-ray just a couple of years ago, actually, but they're now putting it out on 4K with that full 4K scan. So that'll be an interesting one to check out if you're a fan of that movie. So jumping ahead the next week to January 18th, we have one new release movie, which is Last Night in Soho. That's Edgar Wright's new movie that's coming to 4K. Edgar Wright actually is a big fan of physical media, so I'm hoping they do a great job with that, and I'm sure he'll be promoting the 4K release of that pretty hard because he's a big supporter and has a big collection. But then we also have a couple of catalog titles coming on the 18th as well. First, we have the Toolbox Murders from Blue Underground. So that's a kind of gory slasher, definitely B movie. Definitely on the close to X-rated side of things, I would say, which is very typical for Blue Underground movies. They're sort of at the extreme of horror, but it's a pretty relevant slasher movie. It has a lot of loyal fans and sort of a cult following, so it's interesting to see them put that out on 4K after having released it on Blu-ray recently. And then we're also getting the anime film Akira on 4K, so that's coming in a nice limited edition box set, which looks pretty cool. So that's a big get for those fans. And then from Criterion, the first 4K release of the year for them is A Hard Day's Night, which is the first movie that the Beatles put out. They put it together in, I believe, 1964. I want to say. It was black and white. They were very young in this movie, but it's actually a really good time. And Criterion did have the Blu-ray rights as well. I have that in my collection, but I'll definitely be upgrading to 4K because I am a big fan of the Beatles. So now the next week, January 25th, is actually a pretty slow week right now, unless some things fill in here. But there's just one major release to talk about, and it's another Criterion Collection release of the movie The Piano on 4K. So nothing else on that day. Criterion right now owns January 25th. I was surprised. Typically there's several different releases on each day, but right now just The Piano from Criterion. But it is good to see them really picking up the 4K releases in 2022, almost where there's one every couple of weeks, if not every week throughout the year. So that's a really good sign. Then jumping ahead one more week into February 1st, this is also a pretty light day, but what February 1st gives us is the 4K release of Ghostbusters Afterlife, which a lot of fans of the Ghostbusters movies did enjoy. Seems like it was a much welcomed sequel compared to the previous Ghostbuster release. But along with that, we're also getting a sort of Ghostbusters collector set, which has Ghostbusters 1 and 2 on 4K, as well as Ghostbusters Afterlife. So all three of those are coming in this limited edition set with some cool packaging and extras. So if you did want to go that route and you haven't picked up Ghostbusters 1 or 2 on 4K, or you just want to trade in the individual releases, that is also coming out on February 1st to coincide with the release of that new sequel. Now jumping ahead a week to February 8th, we have a couple of catalog titles, one coming from Disney, which is Encanto on 4K. I didn't hear much about this movie. For a Disney animation movie, seems like it was really underplayed, which I think they've been doing lately for some reason. I didn't hear a lot about Luca. I didn't hear a lot about this movie. I don't know what's going on, but they haven't been promoting them very heavily, or maybe I'm just not the target audience. But that one is coming to 4K on February 8th. And then we're also getting King Richard, which is a Warner Brothers movie. It premiered on HBO Max. It got a little bit of Oscar buzz, potentially for Will Smith, maybe for some of the other cast or the movie, the script, whatever, director. It's getting a little bit of buzz. We'll see where that takes it, but King Richard is coming to 4K as well. Then for catalog titles, Kino comes back with another Criterion upgrade, which is Some Like It Hot on 4K. The Criterion Blu-ray of that recently went out of print, and it looks like Kino now has the rights because they're putting out a nice 4K UHD release of Marilyn Monroe's classic movie. And then we also are getting a new DC animated movie, Catwoman, The Hunted, so that's coming to 4K as well. DC Animation and Warner Brothers, they continue to do a great job supporting the 4K format. Seems like almost all of their movies are coming to 4K, and if they haven't yet, they probably will in the future. So if you're a DC animated fan, it's a really good sign to see something even like Catwoman, which probably isn't a top tier animated movie for them, making the jump to 4K. Now on February 15th, we have 3 catalog titles and only one major release. The major release is The Eternals from Disney and Marvel. That's the newest Marvel movie to 4K. It was the latest one to come out before Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a very different story. It's a little bit unique to the Marvel universe, so it got mixed reviews, but I've heard pretty good things about it, honestly, so I'll see if I can get my hands on that one on 4K. But then we got a few catalog titles from boutique distributors. First off, Kino is back again. They've got Touch of Evil coming to 4K, which is a nice classic movie. Should be a really great restoration. Should look awesome on 4K if Kino does a good job. And then we've also got The Howling coming from Shout Factory. So that's a title that they previously had on Blu-ray. I have it in my collection, and now they're upgrading that to 4K, and they've done a 4K scan, and that's always nice to see. So Shout Factory and Scream Factory and their titles, they continue to upgrade to 4K, and looks like they're going to support the format pretty well here into 2022 and beyond. And then for major catalog, we have Looper coming to 4K from Sony. this is an interesting one. There's some debate online whether it's a 2K digital intermediate or a 4K digital intermediate. It was shot a little bit differently, a little bit. There's some stuff on IMDb you can look at. There's some debates online. This is going to be one I definitely want to review and check out because there is sort of a lot of controversy already about whether it's going to be true 4K or not. So I'll be checking that one out on the channel, and make sure you stay tuned for that review. Now, 1 week into the future, February 22nd, all we have here is catalog releases and actually boutique releases for the most part. So the first one is Alligator 4K from Scream Factory, Shout Factory. They're one and the same. So that's a new 4K scan, a newly released title for Scream Factory, which is really cool. It's never come out on Blu-ray before from them as far as I know. And so it's getting a true 4K release here. So exciting for kind of cult B-movie horror fans that love that Shout Factory, Scream Factory line. And then we're also getting another one from Kino Lorber. So a big year for 4K for Kino Lorber already. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is coming to 4K. They've grabbed the rights to that and restored it with 4K transfers, and we'll see how that looks. But a pretty loaded cast in a movie that was definitely a critical darling, but I don't know that it's really held up a lot over the years. I don't hear much about it anymore, so it'll be nice to revisit it. And then from Paramount, we've got Escape from LA on 4K. So Escape from New York has already had a 4K scan, came out in the UK through Studio Canal. They did the scan, also came out through Shout Factory, but now we're getting the sequel, Escape from LA. So I love Kurt Russell, love those movies, love anything he's in really. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one on 4K to see if it's a worthy upgrade. So right now, nothing really on March 1st, 1 week past that, but we do get a couple titles on March 8th. First, we have The Apartment, which is coming from Kino on 4K. That's a movie that won Best Picture back in 1960. So again, more very classic, 50s, 60s era movies coming from Kino Lorber, which has always been sort of their sweet spot, right? Like that golden age of Hollywood. And now they're grabbing the rights to a ton of these 4K releases. Arrow Video actually had done a restoration of The Apartment, and it's had some standard Blu-ray releases as well, but now Kino's grabbed the rights for 4K. So they're definitely getting very aggressive with buying catalog titles from the major studios to release on their label. And then from Synapse, we have Phenomena, which is a pretty cult movie, I would say, from the 80s, horror cult type of thing, sci-fi a little bit, a little paranormal, but that's getting a 4K release on March 8th as well. So it's good to see, Blue Underground has a title in here, Synapse has a title, a lot of the boutique distributors, they're still going, and a lot of them honestly will probably make announcements throughout the year, and they may have more stuff in Jan, February, March, just because they're usually a little bit more delayed with their announcement dates, their release dates, because they're trying to get all the rights and extras together and making sure everything is set and ready to go. So I'd expect to see more from Severance, Synapse, Blue Underground throughout the year. But right now, that's a big one from Synapse, so props to them. They're continuing their 4K titles, and that's going to be a really fun one for fans of that series and that movie. Now, 1 week into the future, on March 15th, we have a very heavy catalog release day. No new releases yet on March 15th, although once we get into March, it is likely that some of these titles that came out around December in theaters could be getting 4K releases in March. Not confirmed dates yet, but right now we've got catalog. First one is American Werewolf in London. That's getting a 4K release from Arrow Video. They previously had released it on Blu-ray, but now this is upgrade to 4K. It's still a limited edition set, so it's pretty cool. It's nice packaging, but that 4K release will be really nice. That's a classic horror movie. Then we're also getting The Sword and the Sorcerer on 4K, so a fun sort of fantasy movie from the 80s. That'll be a lot of fun for fans of that movie. Not a title that will probably sell crazy numbers on 4K, but that's what's cool, is to see some more boutique and some more niche titles like this still getting 4K releases, and clearly we're still supporting the physical format. When you see stuff like this get a 4K release, you'd figure 4K is kind of like the premium level, but movies like Alligator, Toolbox Murders, Sword and the Sorcerer, those are cool to see come to 4K, so that's really exciting. That's on March 15th as well. And then Criterion continues their 4K slate with Le Cercle Rouge, which is an upgrade of a previously released Blu-ray that they had the rights to. They've now upgraded that to 4K and are making that available for collectors, so that's a fun one. And also on March 15th, major catalog, but we're getting the movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg. That's making its 4K debut as actually a steelbook release, but that's the first time it's been available in 4K. So if you like that movie, that could be an interesting one to check out. Now on to March 22nd. This one has sort of an asterisk because I think there's a major title coming out on this day, but it's not 100% confirmed yet. What we have confirmed is that Eastern Promises is coming out on 4K. So that's a really, really great movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. And I'm really excited to see this get a 4K release again. Maybe not the biggest name title, but still getting 4K releases of these types of movies is really, really cool. So that's the 22nd, but also on the 22nd, there's pretty much confirmation that we are getting the Godfather trilogy from Paramount on that day in 4K. Now, we know The Godfather was coming to 4K at some point in 2022, and they're actually re-releasing it in theaters coming up here in the next few weeks. I believe in January of 2022 it's hitting theaters, and so the guess would be a couple months later, as is typical, theatrical to home video, you'll see them on 4K. There actually was a Bull Moose listing, which I couldn't find. I saw screenshots of it and then lost where they were, but there was a listing on Bull Moose's website for March 22nd, The Godfather 4K. So it sounds like retailers out there are getting news that this is coming. They're starting to create listings. It seems like pretty much a certainty for that date. But if not that date, at least sometime in March, April, we will be getting The Godfather on 4K. So that's a huge, huge get for 4K collectors, and I cannot wait to check those out. So then the last date I'm going to cover here before we talk about some rumors is the end of March, and it's March 29th. Now on this day, we're getting an upgrade of RoboCop to 4K from Arrow Video. Again, they had the previous rights on Blu-ray, put out a nice limited edition set with a 4K scan, but now this is coming true to 4K, full 4K UHD versus a 4K downscale to Blu-ray. So that's exciting. Lots of fans of RoboCop. I think that one will sell very well. And then we're also getting The Last Waltz from Criterion on 4K. One of the greatest concert movies ever made. Tells the story of The Band, which is, if you don't know them, go look up their music. They were a huge band in the 60s, and they are called The Band, 60s and 70s. And this is a Martin Scorsese concert movie, which has a loyal following. A lot of people were excited to get this one on 4K. Then also on that day, we have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein coming from Arrow Video as well. So Arrow has a really good 4K slate here throughout the first few months of the year, and I'm sure they have lots more coming. There have been many rumored releases out there for potentially Arrow or Shout Factory or Criterion. There's a couple rumors floating around. We're not sure who's going to get the rights to what, but Arrow is doing Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994 in 4K. And that's sort of the end of the list for March. But what I do want to put here, speaking of Arrow Video, is there is a screenshot of like a coded list of Arrow Video titles for 2022. They kind of tease this every year, and it's like internal wording, and you have to kind of figure out the codes. But they tease titles that are coming, and the screenshot here is what you're looking at. It's on a piece of notebook paper, but this is legit. And so if you can figure out what any of those mean and decode this coded message, you can see there's like some UHD box sets mixed in there. There's some shortened movie titles. I don't know what they all are, but maybe you guys can decode them, leave it in the comments. But Arrow definitely has a full year planned for 2022 with lots of great releases, as you can see from that screenshot. So that's the slate of what's been confirmed. That's January, February, March. And as I said, Spider-Man No Way Home will probably, depending on if it continues to blow up theatrically, it may stay in theaters longer. But that could slide in somewhere there in March. Maybe The Matrix Resurrections could slide somewhere in March. It's usually about 2 to 3 months after their initial release that they're getting a home video disc now. So, expect March to populate a little bit more with some other titles. But right now, this is what we've got as of the end of 2021. Now, for rumors and things that I think are likely to happen this year, there's lots of rumors. There's rumors about movies like It Follows. There's lots of movies like the Tarantino movies, Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Reservoir Dogs. There's been rumors floating around about them. There's lots of rumors about Criterion releases, Amadeus maybe coming to 4K. Lots of that stuff is out there. But for the ones that I think are pretty certain, I have kind of a short list. first one is Heat. I do expect Heat to finally come to 4K in 2022 at some point, because Disney did renew their deal with New Regency, who has the rights to Heat. So they renewed their deal. They're working together again, and that was sort of the holdup as to why Disney didn't want to put that out. But now that they have the rights again, it's likely that that will hit 4K at some point this year, and I'd fully expect it. Another one that could potentially hit is The Abyss. James Cameron just recently commented on the high def transfer being finished and the 4K transfer being completed. They still would need to distribute it, and maybe it gets picked up by a boutique, or maybe the major studio does it. I don't know who's going to handle it, but it sounds like that's finally finished and it has a chance to come out this year. And then in that same vein, Peter Jackson has talked about how now that the Beatles documentary is finished, which he spent a ton of time on, that he's finally looking at getting Dead Alive out on 4K and remastered. So he had a quote out a few weeks back about that, and there's potential that it could certainly come out this year. He even says that in his quote. Maybe towards the end of the year. I would expect, The Abyss or Dead Alive to both sort of happen towards the end of the year, but very high potential that those are coming soon, hopefully to physical media, because just because it has a 4K scan doesn't mean it's actually getting physical. But I think both of those guys definitely support physical media and get the importance of it. So hopefully it does come to 4K disc. And then there's been a lot of rumors floating around about Warner Brothers titles in particular. And I have a good feeling that I have a pretty solid list of what's going to happen this year. Now, when they happen, when they're released, totally unsure on a few of these, but we do have a pretty good idea that Singing in the Rain is coming to 4K sometime in April. We have a good idea that The Green Mile is coming sometime in February or March. So 2 major catalog titles. The Lost Boys is also coming pretty soon. Casablanca is also another one that is on the 4K slate for this year and should be releasing in 2022. And then we also have Poltergeist, which might come out sometime this summer, although it would make more sense if it came out in the fall to tie in with like Halloween season, maybe in September or October, but it could come out in the summer. Also, Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt movie, is slated for a 4K release. That's one I'm definitely looking forward to because I love that movie. I think it's so underrated and it should look great in 4K. And then I've heard rumors of Constantine, Green Lantern, and Giant with James Dean. So those 3 are kind of floating around out there. I'm not really sure like why you would do Giant and not Rebel Without a Cause, or maybe like a James Dean box set, so maybe that is in the works. Green Lantern seems kind of curious, maybe just capitalizing on Ryan Reynolds' continued fame and lovability right now. He seems to be everywhere. And Constantine, I guess same thing with Keanu Reeves, just trying to capitalize on his fame and popularity right now. But those 3 all kind of seem like odd movies. I don't know when they're going to come out, but I have heard at some point in 2022 we're probably going to get those on 4K. And then the big deal for me when it comes to 4K is that next year, towards the end of the year, Christmas season, we're getting 4 major Christmas classics from Warner Brothers on 4K. So we're getting Elf, we're getting Christmas Vacation, we're getting A Christmas Story, and we're getting The Polar Express. Those 4 all coming towards the end of the year. I cannot wait to see Christmas Vacation in 4K because that Blu-ray sucks. I'm excited to see what they can do with Elf because I love that movie. A Christmas Story could look incredible based on the fact it was shot on film, and it has probably a lot of room to upgrade, especially if you've been watching it on like TBS where it runs all day on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It doesn't look that great on TV, so I'm hoping a new 4K scan could be a really great gift for collectors. And then the one that I'm really curious about is The Polar Express, because that's already bordering on the uncanny valley. The animation is, in my opinion, disturbing in that movie, almost borderline like a horror movie. It is terrifying, weird animation that makes you feel a certain way. And so I'm really curious if 4K is going to make that look even worse, because I don't know how you can make it look better. The animation is so creepy, in my opinion. Lots of people love it. It is not one of my favorites. Tom Hanks and his character in particular just creep me out, but so do a lot of the little kids on the train. It's a freaky movie. If you watch it with the lights off, I wouldn't recommend it, but we'll see what they do with 4K with that. That could be a really interesting 4K experience based on the animation. So that's what I know. That's the confirmed list. That's the rumors. Like I said, there's definitely a chance that some Tarantino movies slip out here. Kill Bill, Pulp Fiction. I mean, they're due for 4K releases. They're major titles which will sell a ton of discs if they do release. And I'm sure there'll be other releases throughout the year. You know, there are lots of Criterion, Arrow, Shout Factory rumors. Blue Underground is going to have some releases. Severin, Synapse, Kino is going to continue their 4K slate and push that really hard. Shout Factory, like, there's a ton of stuff that's going to happen this year. So as good as 2021 was for 4K, 2022 is already shaping up, especially for catalog movies, to be an even better year. It seems like we're getting a ton of catalog stuff, and that's most likely because 2021 was still very slow for theatrical releases. With COVID and everything going on, they pushed a lot of stuff back. It still wasn't a great year for theaters, and so a lot of these studios had time to focus on catalog titles, and a lot of the boutique people like Kino or Shout or Criterion, Arrow Video, they could step in and grab the rights to some stuff and really start drumming up the 4K interest. So I think it's going to be an awesome year. Last year was great, and I expect 2022 to be even better. So thanks for watching this video. If there are pre-order links, I'll leave them down in the description. And if you use those links, that helps support my channel. So I do really appreciate that. I appreciate all the support this year as well. 2021 was great for the channel. We're going to probably hit 80,000 subscribers by the end of this year, which is amazing. And hopefully that gets us to 100,000 next year, which is great for my channel, but also great for physical media. We need more channels. I want to support all the physical media channels out there. Let's get them all to 100K. Let's grow this world so more people get interested and we continue to see great releases like the ones I've just talked about here, because we're supporting the format and growing the community. So subscribe, like the video, turn on your notifications, share this video, post it online, do whatever you want to do with it. Get the word out there. I'd really appreciate that. And then make sure to follow me on social media as well, because we're spreading the word over on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all these different places where you can continue to spread the word about physical media and grow the community. So find me on there, say hi. I'll reach out to whoever says hi. I usually get back to everybody at one point or another. But other than that, check out all the other links in my description, ways you can support my channel by shopping, by signing up for different alerts, things like that. And yeah, I hope you guys had a great holiday. Hope you have a great New Year's, and here's to a great 2022. So thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and have a great rest of your day.